Okay, hi everyone. I'm Melinda and I'm talking about Disney. So, once upon a time, in a faraway land called Australia, there was a girl, and she wasn't completely like other girls. Bit geeky, bit weird, didn't really do the stuff that other girls did. And then she discovered the Disney movies. And nowadays, I think Disney sometimes gets a bad rep for not being the right types of role models for girls. But I actually found that I learned a lot from Disney as a kid. I mean, Belle from Beauty and the Beast told me that, it's okay to be smart and it's okay to want to read books all the time. Ariel from The Little Mermaid told me it's okay to want to collect things and ask questions about why stuff works. And it's all these things that made me basically the geek that I am today. So yeah, that's me. So I wanted to talk about some of the things that Disney does. Now, a couple of years ago, a group of friends of mine, they found out that it's not that expensive to actually go to Florida on holiday during the off-season. So they organized a trip with the 7 of them, and at the time I was gutted that I couldn't come along. So earlier this year, we did it again. Disney 2, Disney Harder. So what this basically was 12 geeks, 2 weeks, and a villa in Orlando. Cost about £200 for 2 weeks for the entire villa. And yeah, we thought it was a good idea to go and do that. Plus, the weather is about 25 degrees, which is pretty much summer here in the UK. So we ended up doing all the theme parks and the typical stuff, so Universal, Disney, but also stuff like NASA. We actually got to see a rocket. But yeah, the main thing that we were there for was Disney. So while we were there, we realized that, the last time my friends went, they realized that there's this thing called the Keys to the Kingdom tour. And this is a tour that anyone can book. But you need to book it a couple months in advance, and you can only do it via the US website. But it's a behind-the-scenes tour of Disney. So you get to actually go backstage and see some of the things that the normal visitors wouldn't see. So we booked that, and got an amazing 5-hour-long tour of the entire place and learned a ton of stuff about Disney. So I thought I'd start off with a brief history about how Walt Disney World was created. So it all started at the other side of the country in 1955 when the Disneyland opened. Now, a lot of things went wrong here. There were over 28,000 people on the first day, but half of those people didn't actually have tickets. There was also a lot of problems with the build of the place. So initially, when they opened, a lot of things didn't go completely as planned. So there's stuff like they didn't expect the amount of people, so trash was overflowing. They didn't expect the amount of water they needed, so they needed to choose actually between drinking fountains and running water for toilets. The concrete was actually still settling, so people were getting stuck with their heels and the shoes in the cement. So yeah, there were tons of these things that were going wrong in those first weeks. Next to that, though, when Walt Disney decided to build a place, he built just basically a small plot of land. What he didn't realize, though, was that obviously if Disney, the company, brought some land, people would start getting interested in it. So very quickly, all the land around it got bought up for insane prices. And Disney only had a very specific bit of the land that they could use, so they couldn't expand that much. So about 10 years later, when they wanted to open a second park on the other side of the country, they started buying up land with dummy corporations. And these had weird names like the Latin American Development and Management Corporation and the Reedy Creek Ranch Corporation. There are a ton of other ones. They had about 20 in total, all buying up little parcels of land. So nobody realized that this was all Disney buying it up. So it was also, Florida, swamp, quite cheap prices. Anyway, year later, they decided to petition for the creation of the Reedy Creek Improvement District. And this means that they had full autonomy within its borders. So they started 2 cities, Reedy Creek and Bay Lake, and this basically meant that they could bypass a ton of paperwork. Whenever they wanted to build something, all they had to ask was themselves. If they needed a permit, they could get it from themselves. So this gave them a lot of freedom to do the things they wanted to do. Plus, unlike on the other side of the country, they had a ton of land, so they could do way more things. Weirdly enough, this also means that they have some rights that other cities also do, like the authority to open schools, to create its own justice system, and even build their own nuclear power plants, which most people don't realize. They haven't done any of that yet, but it's the fact that they can. So a year later, Walt Disney actually dies of cancer, which wasn't that surprising since he was a chain smoker. But it basically meant that he never got to see his final vision of what Walt Disney World would be. And his brother Roy had to come out of retirement to finish the entire project, so that hopefully somebody in the family would finish this vision that Walt had. So in 1971, the Magic Kingdom finally opened. And since then, it's expanded a whole lot more. So Walt Disney World actually has 4 different theme parks: Magic Kingdom, Hollywood Studios, Epcot, and the Animal Kingdom. But don't really go to that one because that one's a bit crap. And it has also 2 water parks, and next to that, 34 resorts and hotels. And all of this is all on that same plot of land. So the keys to the Kingdom tour. The main thing that we got to see was kind of that behind-the-scenes look, but they also tried to explain how Disney built the parks. And they built their parks with what they call the 4 keys, the 4 keys to the kingdom. And while on this tour, I quickly realized that there's a lot of lessons here that we as web developers can learn from how Disney built their parks, mainly because they're just so focused on creating this cool experience. So first up, safety. Now, safety, the obvious thing of safety is the rides, making sure that people are safe on rides and don't die or break a leg or anything like that. But that's not the one that I find interesting. Safety of rides is kind of like the security of web apps. It's something that you should do and everyone should look at, but it's not the super interesting thing I find. What I find more interesting is looking at the subtle things that Disney has done to improve their customer safety. So here's the first one. So I thought I'd ask all of you, why would that be safety? Does anyone have any idea? Yeah, lightning rods. So Florida is prone to hurricanes and thunder and lightning, so they have to make sure that throughout the entire park there are lightning rods. So they do, and most of the time, though, these are completely unnoticeable. So everywhere throughout the park, wherever you go, there are these lightning rods and conductors. So in Discovery Land, all the different spires, they'll all be lightning rods. In Hollywood Studios, the little Mickey Mouse that's on top of the pillar is a lightning rod. Even like weather vanes on certain buildings are lightning rods. So it's all these little subtle things that Disney is doing. Now the second one is pavement. Again, it's a bit subtle. It's a height change. Whenever Disney has a height change whenever there's a height change, Disney will color it so that people are aware of that there's a change happening. So it's just a small visual cue for the people to realize, actually, something is happening now, and I have to take care when I'm stepping one step lower, just to make sure that the customer doesn't trip and stumble. So it's very tiny, but it's throughout the entire park. Wherever you go, these steps will always be colored slightly differently. The other one is open doors. So all the doors of every store will always be open. And it's just to make sure that people don't have to open and close them throughout the entire day. And again, it's stopping people from having accidents with bumping into stuff. Now the fourth one is the slant of the pavement. It's not really clear from the picture, but when you come into Main Street, USA, the pavement of the street is slightly slanted upwards. And the main reason for this is just think about when you were a kid and you go to a theme park. The first thing you start doing is running. Running like hell to your favorite part of the park. And Disney realized that this happened, so what they did was put the pavement on a slight slant and make sure that it just tires the kids and the people that are running somewhat more. So by the time that they hit the middle of the park, they're slightly out of breath and need to take it a bit more slower. So it's this subtle thing to make sure that the people don't trip and stumble and hurt themselves. The next one is the bins. Now, I'm still not completely sure how much of this is an urban legend, but the story goes that with the first park, Walt Disney got annoyed by the amount of people that didn't throw away their trash. And he came up with the number of 30 steps. 30 steps is the amount of steps people will take when they're trying to find a trash can and then get bored and will just drop their trash on the street. So he made sure that no matter where you were in the park, there would be a trash can within 30 steps of you, just to make sure that, wherever you went, you'd actually throw your trash away rather than throw it somewhere else. Trash. And all these things together kind of get summed up, I find, in this quote of Disney. You don't build it for yourself. You know what the people want, and you build it for them. So when it comes to us as web developers, I find this very much kind of means anticipate what your users want. Think about what it is that your users are trying to achieve, even though they necessarily might not realize that they're trying to achieve it. So one example of that is on gov.uk, when people are trying to find the next bank holiday, the main thing that they show on it is when the next bank holiday actually is, rather than before when you had to scroll through a bunch of pages about explaining what a bank holiday actually is, and you need to look up which year it is, and etc. It's giving your users straight away what they want. Another example, GitHub and any other places that do autocomplete search results. It's just very much helping your users slightly quicker in getting to where they want to be. And here's another example. Who here uses Slack? Okay, so not many people. So Slack is a team communications platform. So it's a bit like RSC, but nicer and prettier. But the first time that you use Slack, it has these little highlights giving you a tour of how to use their interface. And how I see it, this is basically creating that metaphorical slanted pavement. It's rather than having your users run for hell into your app, you're just slowing them down and giving them a little bit of time to get used to it and not trip and fall and stumble. So that's safety. Next up is courtesy. So again, we have Main Street, USA. Again, we have the open doors. It's friendly, it's inviting, so people will want to come into the building and buy stuff. Second one, again, slanted pavement. In this case, it's for at the end of the day. So at the end of the day, you're all tired and want to go home. And it's just that more easier to get out of the park because the pavement is going downwards. And you don't realize it, but it's just that bit more easier to get home. And again, 30 steps, it's about making your customers not have to walk that much. and making their lives just slightly more easier. Here's another example. Now, when I went to the park earlier this year, it was just a couple of weeks since I'd gotten engaged. And one of my friends, he ended up getting all of us badges. Me and my fiance got just engaged ones, and the other guys got stuff like first time here, or I've got something to celebrate. And they're these huge badges about this size that you need to wear. And initially I kind of thought, I'm not going to wear this. This looks a bit silly, cheesy. But we quickly realized that the moment that you're wearing these, any Disney employee that sees you will congratulate you. And it's a conversation starter, wherever you are, whether it's in a queue for a ride or actually on the ride itself. These employees will see you and go, congratulations! When's the big day? How did you propose? And you actually start having conversations with them. And I quite like that. I quite like that there's this human element to it. So, again, another quote from Disney. You can design and create and build the most wonderful place in the world, but it takes people to make a dream a reality. So, it's all about being personal, being human, being friendly, being honest. In short, kind of don't be a robot. So, adding this slight human element to whatever it is that you're doing. The first example that came to mind, mainly because they did that ages ago, was a Flickr. Whenever you logged in, it would give you a friendly message in a different language, welcoming you to the site. It's a bit more hidden nowadays with their new interface, but I always thought that was a nice human touch. Another one that I found is Citymapper. Their release notes are always funny and cool to read. But I kind of want you guys to think about what things in the apps that you use and that you build have that personal element to it. What is it that makes you stop and think, yeah, this is kind of cool. This is something that reads human. So the third one is efficiency. Now, again, we have Main Street, USA. And again, we have the flags. Now, again, I'll ask you guys, does anyone have an idea why this might be related to efficiency? And it's got nothing to do with lightning this time. Do you have any Americans here in the room? Should we be embarrassed by this? Not completely. How much do you guys know about the American flag code? So apparently there are these certain rules that you need to abide to if you have an actual American flag, like hoisting it up and taking it down at certain moments of the day. So Disney, as being a proper American park, wants to do that. So throughout the park, they actually only have a couple of flags that are actually proper American flags. Everything else is a fake. Everything else has a couple of stars extra, or a couple of stripes extra, or a slightly different shade of color. None of the flags that are on top of the buildings are real American flags. And it's all because of efficiency. They still want to abide to the flag code, but they don't want to do it for every single flag that's there. So yeah, most of the flags that you'll see aren't real American flags.
It's okay, most Americans don't know how many states there are.
Yeah. So the next one is, again, the doors being open. It's efficient. People don't have to open and close them throughout the day. Next to that, though, all the stores inside are actually also connected. So although from the outside it seems like they're different stores next to each other in different buildings, it's actually one gigantic building. So if you want, you can get from one side to the street to the other, all within the one building. So again, it's about efficiency. It's about making it easier for people to go from one place to the other. And again, slanted pavement, and this time it's about getting people out of the park quicker. It's quicker. Again, we have the bins. And in this case, it's because Disney really disliked having people walk through the park to collect trash. So he tried to come up with a way that this didn't need to happen. So there still will be trash collectors grabbing, emptying those bins, but they don't have to walk that far. Throughout the park, there are very specific disposal units that are connected to the utilidors. So there's this special system called the AVAC system, which is a pressurized waste disposal system. So it very quickly moves waste from one side to the other, and it's all connected to the utilidors. So when you're walking around down there, you have these big, huge tubes where trash is just being sucked past you throughout the day. The other thing about the utilidors, so this is actually the ground floor. This was built before the rest of the park was built. So a lot of people think that when they get to the park, that's the first thing they see. And most people are completely unaware that there's actually this secret tunnel system under the park that is the original ground floor. And this is also used for a ton of other stuff. So for deliveries, but also most food services, all the kitchens are underground. So it's hiding away a lot of these things. Another thing what Walt Disney really wanted this for was for the characters. So he didn't want characters appearing in places of the park that they weren't supposed to show up in. So you never will see Buzz Lightyear in Frontierland. You never see Cinderella in Discoveryland. He wanted every single character to only be in the places where they're supposed to be. So the utilidors I also used a lot for getting from for these Disney employees to getting from one point to the other. So this all relates to this quote. I don't want the public to see the world they live in while they're in the park. I want them to feel they're in another world. So that's this idea of hiding away the technicalities. It's trying to remove the mundane stuff and making sure that your users don't see it. So it's stuff like not doing this, not throwing error messages that people won't understand, but doing something a bit nicer and funnier where you're actually helping your users. And again, this also kind of links back to helping your users get what they want easier. So instead of in Citymapper, it's a travel app, and it does what most travel apps do, getting you from one place to another. Well, helping you find how to get from one place to another. But one of the things they do is actually allow you to store where you work and where your home is and all the places that you normally are. So rather than having you go through the technicalities of entering all those details in over and over and over again, they're making it easier to allow you to very quickly get what you want. So then we have show. Now Disney is all about show. Everything they do is about creating this special experience. So again, we have Main Street, USA. And again, we have the flags. In this case, it's just purely decoration. Different flags are, well, the lightning rods are here flags. In other places, they're weather vanes. In other places, they're spires. So it's all about making sure that these things are hidden away and they fit in with the environment. And again, we have the pavement, and in this case, it's different parts of the park will have different types of pavement. It seems kind of obvious, but they design it to the point where you'll be in Frontierland, and there'll be things like hoof prints and car tracks and just wear and tear that are completely man-made. And most people don't really realize it until you stop and start looking at the floor that you're standing on, that every little aspect of it is designed. And the same thing is in other parts of the park. So in the Fantasyland, you'll have little bits of glitter in some places, just adding that little bit of magic to your experience. And then again, we have the slanted pavement. And in this case, it's all helping to create this forced perspective. So it's all about creating this illusion that the castle that you see in the middle is much bigger than it actually is. So, and this is also helped by other things. So all the buildings that you see are slightly angled inwards. So it gives you the illusion that Main Street is actually much larger, much wider than it actually is, and that it's coming to this point somewhere far in the distance. Well, actually, it's way nearby than you think it is. The other thing that they do is the height of the buildings. Now, if you look at the pictures, you'll think it's 3 stories high, because that's what they want you to believe. Well, actually, each of those buildings are only 2 stories high. So it's creating this illusion that what you're walking around in is something that's far bigger and grander than it actually is. And then you have a similar thing with Cinderella's castle in the middle. It looks nice and big, but when you actually look closer, you realize it still has that effect. And what they do, again, is creating this forced perspective. As the building becomes taller, its proportions get smaller. So it's giving you this illusion that it's way higher, but actually it's about half the height that your mind will think it is. So again, it's all about creating this illusion that you're somewhere where you actually aren't. So another thing that they do is smell. I want to call it smell engineering, but I'm not really sure that's the actual word for it. But they plan out where you start smelling different smells. So at the start of the park, when you come in, you'll smell popcorn. Now, popcorn most people associate with the circus and with cinema, basically just with childhood, with having a good and fun experience. So Disney will put these popcorn machines right at the start of the park. So the moment that you come through the gates, you have this smell of popcorn. And you start remembering just childhood and this expectation of something going to happen. And it's very smart. It's just not something that most people are completely aware of. And they'll do the same thing in Main Street, USA. They'll have, what I said before is that there were kitchens downstairs in the utilidors. So one of them is the cookie kitchen, bakery. And they'll actually have special fans blowing up the smell of the cookies up onto the street, so that when you're walking through the main street, you'll have this smell of cookies, which most people tend to think of like family and homemade cookies. So again, it's using smell to trigger these emotions and memories that people might have and associate them with the experience that they're having at that moment. Same thing is for the Haunted Mansion. Whenever you're there, it will smell dusty and old, like a good library. And again, it's exactly engineered for it to smell that way. Pirates of the Caribbean, the ride, the same thing. It will smell like sea salt. It will smell like being at sea. And again, most people that are on those rides won't really notice, but it's all adding to triggering those emotions. Another thing Disney actually does also is illusion. How many of you here have been to Disney? To any of the parks? Okay. So my favorite ride is the Haunted Mansion, mainly because it's full of different illusions. And one of them is this one, where you pass this ballroom of basically dancing ghosts. And as a kid, I was completely mesmerized by this. I had no idea how they managed to do this. And it's actually a familiar magician's trick called Pepper's Ghost. And while they were building this ride, they actually invited a couple of magicians to come along and test ride the ride. And they actually couldn't figure out what was being used on this on the ride, mainly because Disney applied it in such a way that most magicians actually hadn't seen before. But throughout the entire park, throughout the entire rides, they'll be using these traditional illusions and apply it and apply it to create this experience. Another example is a lot of the buildings that are in the background that actually contain most of the rides. They'll be painted in a green and a gray, which they kind of call hideaway green and no sea green, I think. And it's this color that apparently our eyes won't necessarily focus on if there's something more interesting around. So all the type of buildings that contain rides will have this. Whenever it sticks out a bit above another beautiful building, they'll paint it this shade of green or gray. Another thing that Disney does is none of their employees they'll actually call employees. Everyone that works at Disney is a cast member. So it's this idea that everyone that's working there is on show. So it's not only the character type cast members that actually have to play this role of princess or whatever other Disney characters there are, but it's also all the other people that work at the park. So the ones that maintain the rides, the people that sell stuff at the shops. Every person is a cast member, and every person has their own specific role that they need to play. And this actually comes down to when you go backstage of the park, there's actually one line on the floor that marks where cast members will be seen and where they won't. So the moment that they step over that line, they have to be on show. The moment that they step back, they know they won't be seen by any visitors, and they can display whatever they want to display. And it's all, again, about this idea of playing this role and always having to be on and on show. And all of this together ties in with this quote. Disneyland is a star. Everything else is in the supporting role. So Disney is all about creating this special experience, and every little thing that they do is contributing to this one big thing. So even down to the fireworks that happen every single night, it's all about creating this magical experience for the visitors, even if they might be only attending one single day. It's always about how do you make these people remember this special thing. So that's kind of be magical. Do something that your users will remember. Do something that your users will smile at and make them laugh and make them associate whatever it is that you do with these good memories. So the one example that I could think of was in Slack. There's a little button called Surprise Me in the settings. Won't say what happens if you hit that, because I want you guys to figure it out. But again, it's this one little thing that's just adding something special, something magical to the user's experience. And again, I want you guys to just stop and think about what is it about other apps and sites that you use or that you build that just make you stop and think and go, huh, that's really nice. And that will stay with me always. So those are basically the 4 keys that Disney have. Safety, courtesy, efficiency, and show. And these are basically the lessons that we can learn from it. Anticipate what your users want. Don't be a robot. Hide away the technicalities and just be magical. And finally, it still comes down to basically this. Do what you do so well that they will want to see it again and bring their friends. And this not only applies to building a park, but it applies to us. Whatever it is that we build, this is basically what we want. We want to do it so well that they'll want to see it again and again and again. And the next time along, they'll shout it out to their friends and bring their friends along. And that's basically what every web developer wants, I guess. These are the credits for all the photos I've used. Thank you. Any questions?